Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to the sixth episode of Ada the Autistic Alien. I'm really happy that you're here with me today again. And I want to start this episode by confessing that I actually don't really have a plan on where I'm going with this podcast. And I usually script it, or script the episode that I will record in this week in the days ahead of me recording it. And sometimes this really scares me because I'm like, oh my God, on Thursday I will record the next podcast and I don't even know what it will be about yet. And this week I realized two things. First of all, I think this is a really good training in trusting the universe, because in the end, I know that I set the intention of recording that podcast and I focus on subjects or finding subjects to cover that might be interesting for others as well, that just pop up in my life. And so I actually put the focus there, I put the intention there, and I put the energy there. So it's actually almost impossible that I wouldn't find any topic. Plus, I'm very interested in many subjects. So if I wouldn't find anything, I could still look into what I already know and maybe share something of that with you. So to me, it's very much a teaching in trusting the universe that I will know what I will talk about at the right time. That was the first thing I learned. And the second thing I learned this week was that, you know how I told you that I see everything as interconnected? So actually what happens in my life right now also is connected to that podcast, because I record that podcast right now, right? So that's why I want to talk about belonging in this episode, and how I had a hard time to learn that if I belong to myself, I don't need an external place to which I belong. And that's currently my subject that I worked on it already a lot, but those of you who already are on the journey of self-reflection know that it's kind of a spiral, right? You understand more about a certain topic, like conditioning or codependency, and then you work on that part. And then you travel further and you realize, oh, there is like a metaverse to it. There is a deeper layer to it. There is for example, me, I worked on that sense of belonging for the past 3 years with myself. And at some point I realized that it's also related to Terra, our planet, our home, our mother, and also to other people and other entities and stuff like that, yeah? So that was kind of the meta layer to that subject was, okay, now I created that sense of belonging for myself, but I still don't feel like I belong to this world. So that's the next step to take, the next work to do, so to speak. At the moment, I learned that belonging is very much connected to boundaries. I always questioned myself, and through that, gave a lot of my space to others without even realizing it. Then the space left for myself got so tiny that I leashed out on the others, which made it easy to blame me for my perceived overreaction. And I was very much ashamed that I leashed out in the first place, because I also didn't really understand what was happening. This week, I was blessed to embrace this part of myself by understanding that when I, for others, overreact, I have given them too much of my space in the first place. And it's not okay to blame someone for how they communicate and then not give any consideration to what was communicated. We are humans. We have to relearn how to communicate, and sometimes we will do it messy. And it's totally okay. No, it's even very good and healthy to tell someone, hey, maybe that was a harsh way to state your truth, but only if what was stated as truth is discussed further and really looked at. A lot of my life, I got blamed for my overreaction, but nobody actually really gave attention to what I was overreacting. So I first had to build that understanding for myself within myself. And now I'm, let's say, triggered to learn how to really embrace that understanding of myself in the outer world. And I'm learning where it's good to put my foot down and say, hey, okay, that's not working. And where I am allowed to just leave the situation. Because I can also just say no and go. I don't owe anybody anything. I also learned that with the right people, a good way of dealing with such situations kind of comes naturally. Because when I have these kind of leash outs with my best friends or with people who I really like and who I vibe with, then we always find a common ground where we can share what in the situation has hurt one another, and we both give invitations for the other to really own up to their own reaction or behavior, so that we both can grow and learn, and especially so we can both develop our self-love further. Because that's, I think, the main key I found this week, is that I always blamed myself so strongly for leashing out, and now I realize that sometimes I leash out in situations where I do not get hurt otherwise. So when people continuously show me, and not tell me, but show me through their actions and reactions that they are not able to take positive or constructive criticism, that they are not able to react to a situation unemotionally and without getting triggered by their past, then I need to get loud. I need to get bullying to be heard. And I don't like that part, and it's not an excuse. But that for me was the last straw to understand that I am not built to be in this situation. Because it's not okay that I become someone that I am not, and that this someone is blamed for everything without anybody else taking accountability for their behavior, that my only way out is just leaving the situation. And that might be the biggest act of self-love that I have practiced to this day. So right now, I let all those go with whom it doesn't work, because everyone has their right to their way of living. But when I love myself, I walk away from anything that does not come from a place of love. Before I loved myself, I thought boundaries were unnecessary and kind of limitations. Like everybody, I was conditioned to believe that as long as I took care of everybody else's needs, they would take care of mine, without either of us voicing their actual needs. Today, I call this the Disney conditioning, believing that everyone is so telepathic that they know my own needs without me knowing them, and vice versa. The bad news is, this is never going to happen. The good news is that it never is going to happen actually happens for us. Life on Earth is a journey towards the one true self. So the quest on this journey, in our day and age, is to get to know one's own needs and learn how to live accordingly to them without harming others in the process. There are no good or bad needs, yet the needs of people can differ largely. That's where boundaries come in. What's good for you isn't necessarily what's good for me, and vice versa. Limits are actually what free us. Because if I set clear boundaries and act in tune with my own needs, I clear my space and I own my space, so you can do so too. This doesn't always mean that we will find a middle way. Often, it will mean that our paths will part at this point because they will develop into different directions. A lot of people grew up in homes where the individuals were not allowed to have differing emotions towards the same situation. This conditioned us to believe that we all have to feel the same and have the same needs and boundaries. That is simply untrue. Some people have more need of social interaction than I do, and others even less. To each their own. I learned in the past month that I often do not allow myself to feel the way I feel because I have this theory in my mind how one should feel in a situation like the one I'm currently in. What a suppressive way of tending to myself. And the way out of that is to choose myself, with all my quirks and flaws and from the outside perceived overreactions, and not diminish how I feel, or not tell how I feel, just because others feel different or do not speak their own minds. And it's so funny, because I lived by myself for 3 years and I loved this place. I was there with my cat only. We had our peace. Everything was amazing. But I got kind of lonely because when I live somewhere, I really live there. Like, I stay there. And when you're not as socially compatible with many people, I never went out again because a lot of my friends also lived far away. And so at some point I realized that I kind of reached the end game with that flat and that place to live. And I realized that now I created this sense of belonging for myself, that it's time to create it within the world. So it was very hard when I moved to the place I am at right now and had to understand that this might not be the right place to be either. And now I understand that the place I am in right now is actually the best place I could end up because I can learn here what I need to actually create a sense of belonging within the outside world as well. And as paradoxically as living on Earth is, it actually goes over setting clear boundaries. It's over setting very clear boundaries that I will also enable myself to have closer relationships and better relationships and relationships that are nurturing to me on the levels that I need them to be nurturing. Because what I understood is that I never felt like I belonged anywhere because through my people pleasing, I didn't create a sense of belonging within myself. The more clear boundaries I set, the more I feel like I belong, not to the place I currently call home, but to myself within it. And then, of course, the outside can still trigger, and of course, I am still no absolute professional in communicating, but I don't leave myself anymore. I don't dissociate anymore. I stay within myself. And it's such a beautiful feeling to do that. To let the chi flow through my body, through my aura, and just be there. And know that just because others right now do not agree with me, nothing will happen. I think that might also be a trigger or an unhealed wound why we people please in the first place. Because when we grew up in a home where that was needed, so we couldn't like really tune into our own emotions towards a situation, but we had to tune into others' emotions towards a situation to kind of copy them. That these people were our parents or they were our caregivers. So we relied on them for food. We relied on them for nurturing. We relied on them for care and for shelter. And maybe beneath the people-pleasing need is that unhealed trauma of having to cope like that with people who could actually make you lose your home. So I think maybe people-pleasing is very much related to belonging. Very, very much related to belonging, and the sense of I belong here is then created over we all have the same emotion, so towards a situation, so we belong to each other. And I am now giving myself the space and the love to say, no, I belong to myself and I have the right to feel my emotions and I have the right to communicate my emotions, also to make mistakes in this communication. And if others do not agree with me, they can voice when they are harmed. And otherwise, it's okay because I belong to myself. And if these are the right people, we can have differing emotions towards the same situation and they will stay. And they will not blame and shame me for my overreaction without actually looking at what was said. They will have a way of interacting with my shadows and I will have a way of interacting with their shadows that is constructive. And, you know, there is a quote of Bob Marley that's very dear to my heart. It says, truth is, everyone is going to hurt you. You just gotta find the ones worth suffering for. And although it may sound sad in the beginning, I think that's what I was going, that's where I was going at with what I just said, that the right people will also trigger you. So you will feel the pain again that was in your past, but you will both have naturally a way because of your vibe that will heal the pain. It will trigger the pain, but it will also heal it, you know? And those that just trigger it and then leave it unhealed, and you do the same with them, are not your people. They are not your tribe, and it's best to walk away. Yeah? Because everyone has their right to live the way they want to. Everyone has the right to express emotions how they want to. And just as I will find more people that vibe with me and where all of this comes naturally, they will also find their people where they will vibe and this all comes naturally, you know? So leaving a situation is not leaving anyone behind. It's actually freeing space for them to find the people that match them better. And also freeing space for you to find people that match you better. Yeah? And nobody's right and nobody's wrong. It's just different ways of living, different ways of vibes, different ways of dealing with life. And that's totally fine. Yeah? So when I realized that belonging is very much related to myself and how much space I give myself, I realized that I still had this subconscious self-harming behavior of questioning and criticizing myself for my intense reactions. And that's what I'm correcting now. And not by excusing this behavior, but rather see my outbursts as signs of boundaries. Like kind of when I outburst, my boundaries were severely crossed, either maleficently or because I didn't communicate them clearly enough. And then I can take the outburst as a trigger of reflection and see, okay, where did I not voice my needs clearly enough? Where was my shadow still wanting to have the same emotion towards a certain situation like everybody else has? And because I suppressed it, because I wanted to have the same emotion like the others, because I wanted to belong to them, I suppressed my voice and the things that I didn't like. And then I can take it as a part of reflection and be kind to myself and say, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, inner child, or I'm so sorry, shadow, that I didn't voice your concerns because I wanted to belong to them more than I wanted to belong to myself. Because I am okay too. And no matter how many people agree with me, I can have my needs, I can have my boundaries. And if we are not matching, then I can go. So actually, and this reflection on, oh, okay, I overreacted. Oh, okay, where didn't I feel heard? And then where didn't I hear myself? Or where did I hear myself, but I didn't voice my needs because everybody else seemed like has different needs? I see that the way they live. And this really made me befriend my anger as well, which is beautiful. Because I got judged for my anger throughout my life, because there is a fiery dragon inside of me. What I learned over spending time and having conflicts with the right people is that, of course, this fiery dragon is my responsibility. Yet when people overstep my boundaries continuously, like over and over again, although I have communicated them clearly, anger is my best tool. When I get angry, suddenly I get heard. Until now, with the wrong people, I got judged for my anger, and what was said when I was angry wasn't even acknowledged, because Angry Dada was to blame, and because she communicated angrily, the others were allowed to ignore what was said altogether. With the right people, I get held accountable for my anger. I can kind of tame this fiery dragon, but I also get heard. I get acknowledged. I get accepted. They want to know why they triggered me or what I keep suppressed. They want to know because they care and I care for them. And, I feel like to do that, maybe you first have to really learn how to care for yourself. Because the more you learn how to care for yourself, the more space to do so you have for others that you love and that maybe can reciprocate that gift. And that's just a massive, massive, massive difference to what I've experienced before when I was still also not loving towards myself. And that's why also I say that the key to all of it, to like living the life of your dreams or whatever it is you wish for, just having no anxiety anymore or whatever, is really self-love. Learn how to love yourself, and it's not an easy path and there is no manual. I have some training on my YouTube for free, of course, and then you can use Gnodius Auton, my free web app, on my website as well for that. And it's a path, but it's so worth it because that's all I'm talking about right now. And I told you that I'm consciously working on my self-love since 3 years now. And that's where I'm at right now with these boundaries. So it's a path, but it's beautiful. It's so beautiful because, with every day more, I become my own best friend, something I longed for since I was very young. Yeah, that's what this Disney conditioning is actually that you have to look for that on the outside, that there is somebody else taking care of you, that there is somebody else to see your needs so you don't have to see them yourself. And loving yourself is actually deconditioning that belief. It's you becoming that person. And that's the quote, you are what you're looking for. Yeah? And I don't say that you don't need love from others then anymore. That's not what I'm saying. We need that. We're social beings, right? Even me as an artist that maybe doesn't need that much social interaction, I still love people and I love animals. So, but just to get back to topic, that as long as I hope that somebody will come and fulfill my needs without me putting up boundaries and communicating clearly what I want and working for that, nothing will happen. Maybe once in a lifetime there comes somebody that just sweeps you out of your shit. Happened to me. And it was the biggest blessing of my life, but it was also the worst blessing of my life because they got me out of my shit, but then I relied on them. I wasn't free. I couldn't do what I wanted. Or only if I would go back to having nothing. And that's what I did. But you know what I mean? So, like, somebody else can help you with it, and you will need that. Everybody needs a support system, be it animals, be it crystals, be it oils, be it humans, whatever. Yeah, music. But you becoming more and more of that support system yourself is actually what fills that hole within the solar plexus. That feeling of, oh my God, I missed something. Where is this person? Yeah, because for me, I'm a big relationship person, and I'm not in one right now. And for sure, there are certain things that I would love to have, but there is no missing in my life. It's not like there is an empty space, because I am with myself. Yeah, I'm in a relationship with myself first and foremost, and so this feeling of being in need or being in lack vanishes as well. Yeah. And that's just, it's such a massive difference. I know I repeat myself here, but it's such a massive difference. And of course, the outside is my mirror. So the right people arrived when I was able to love myself better. Yeah, so this is like inside outside spiraling, right? The more I unlock within myself, the more I unlock on the outside, which will then help me unlock more on the inside again, which then will unlock more on the outside. And it's like this game, right? And I feel like this game is maybe something I want to dive into just a little bit more as well. That's why I always say it's so important what we put into our system, because in our system it will like spark something, and then we will act on that spark, and then we will create something of that spark in our outside, and this will again spark something on the inside, right? We could call that inspiration, or we could just call it the way of life. Yeah, the symbiosis of inside and outside, or the evolution that they are both a part of. Yeah. And the mind is like tofu. That's what I just read this week on Facebook, and it's so true. Yeah, it becomes what you marinate it in. So what you put in, you will put out, and it will become your life. Yeah, it's kind of like a dance. The outside takes one step into you, then you take one step into the outside, and again and again and again and again. Yeah, and I think like with everything in life, to have a beautiful dance, there must be harmony between the dancers and harmony between the steps of the dance. And for that, we first have to be conscious about what is dancing with us. Yeah. So when I read the news every day and I read about war and about lack and about poverty every day, that's what I'm dancing with. If I read about extraterrestrials and star seeds and spiritual guidance all day, that's my dance. And to me, it's very important to like have a very vital dance. Yeah. So I like to have like different kinds of energies that I feed myself with. So I have a very multi-dimensional dance, let's say. But yeah, because I believe it's very important to understand that, right? That everything that happens on the outside mirrors us something that we carry within, and it actually is such a blessing that it arrives on the outside, because then it's finally manifested. And if you have the right perspective, you can look at it and you're like, oh wow, that's what's happening. And by either finding a way of dealing with it in the outside, you will find a way to deal with it on the inside, or by taking yourself out of the equation, by leaving the situation on the outside, you also say goodbye to all that shadow that was there and now manifested and got purged. Yeah. What happens right now is always purge. It's not happening to us again. Yeah. It's coming up to leave. And we can struggle with that and suffer, or we can work with it and still like cry and everything, but it's not that much of a suffering as I understand it. Because right now also what I learn is my anger is my best friend, because it shows me my boundaries. Over reflection in a journal, one can start to have a conversation with their anger as to understand where their own boundaries lie. So if you maybe can relate that sometimes you just leash out and you don't really know where that comes from, or you have like this like anger thing, like wherever it may be held. Maybe you want to start an anger journal, because it really helped me heaps to understand where, okay, this is where my boundary was, and I kind of knew that that was my boundary. Did I voice it? No. And to me, that's why actually I kept on not voicing it, because I didn't say anything in the first place. So the insight that I wanted to have the same emotions as the others was major. It was such a key to deeper self-love, because I wanted to feel like everybody else feels towards the situation. That's why I didn't say anything. And I don't say that as an excuse. I don't say that that was fine. But before, I was like inside myself, and that was subconscious. I didn't know it. Now I can voice it, but I didn't know it before I kept my anger journal. When I realized, oh, fuck, actually, I'm also very angry with myself. Like there is a shadow within me that's super angry with myself because I didn't voice it from the beginning. And every time I wanted to voice it, I kept it shut because I kind of blamed myself and shamed myself for not having it voiced earlier. And that's like, it's not fair to anyone. It's not fair to the people around me. It's not fair to myself. It's not fair to the situation. And that's okay, because I was not treated fairly as well. And by understanding that I'm so angry because it's not fair, and I'm very much about fairness and justice, I can look at, okay, where was I not fair towards myself? And then I can own that part. And then I can own where I wasn't fair towards others. And then I can find my conclusion. Yeah? And it's not about, in the end, about blaming. Yeah? It's about, fuck, okay, I didn't get the space to voice my needs. And it's always 50-50. That's also something I wanted to cover in this episode. It's so important, yeah? If you're like me and you question yourself a lot and you like blame yourself all the time for everything that happens with other people or in your life, understand that it's always 50-50. It's 50% outside and 50% inside. Yeah? It's a co-creation all the time. So it's neither 100% your fault, and I don't even want to call it a fault, but your thing, and it's not 100% the other's thing. It's always interrelated. That's what sometimes makes it so difficult to really understand, yeah? But by me not taking responsibility for my own emotions and voicing them, I gave space to others to treat me the same way, yeah? But then again, I think they have maybe kind of the same pattern. So they will also suppress anything that I want to say because they just want to keep things the way they are, because they, in their perception, are good the way they are. And hence my overreaction. And so that just also is a very big point to have more self-love. It's always 50-50, and the only 50% I am really responsible for are my own. So I can see like, okay, where was I unfair to myself and got angry because of that? Where was I unfair to others? And they got angry because of that, or I got even more angry because of that and stuff like that, yeah? And because, anger is the emotion that got conditioned away from us the most. And it's just not healthy. Yeah, I feel like a lot of the deconditioning process is also about embracing your own anger. You are allowed to be angry because if you are angry, somebody overstepped your boundaries. Yeah. And if you're chronically angry, then most probably somebody did that a lot to you when you were a kid. And there are somatic healing therapies. There are a lot of therapies that work with exactly that, where you just unleash that. You can also go boxing. Like, that's what I recommend a lot of people when they do the sessions with me and they have these kind of issues. It's like to unleash the inner anger and find a constructive way to deal with it. Boxing is perfect because it's also about hitting something, right? Yeah, so I want to close this episode with like the biggest understanding that I had of this week is that all of us are allowed to feel what we feel and need what we need. All we have to do is communicate clearly and being fine with others feeling and needing other things than we do. And now that's a very cute sentence, and it sounds so easy, doesn't it? But it's, I think, a lot of work, and I think it will take me some years until I'm really good with it, also with people that I maybe don't vibe with, Because of course it's also easier with people that kind of look at life the same way and kind of work with life the same way. But my goal would be to also be able to communicate clearly and set my boundaries when the others are clearly having a very different point of perspective and a very different point of view on life and how they handle it and how they live it, And not for them, but just to create a bigger sense of belonging for myself on Terra and with its inhabitants as well. Yeah. Just when I finished scripting this, I stumbled upon a quote by an artist called Gaia on Facebook. Having your emotions consistently invalidated as a child and one day waking up as an adult expected to validate your own emotions in order to set boundaries and trust your feelings over everyone else's is an extremely wild experience. Be gentle with yourself. You're learning. And I really like that quote, and I want to close this episode with that. So I really hope you enjoyed the 6th episode already of Arad the Autistic Alien. As always, I'm very happy that you're here sharing this journey on Terra with me. And I send you much, much love and a big hug. And hear you next week. Bye bye.